this here is no ordinary rig, because this is the bungee rig, and I'm going to show you how to tie it up. So the bungee rig really is different to most rigs that are out there because it's got that element of elasticity in the hook link. As you can see there's a good few inches of elastic movement, which means that once that bait's taken into the fish's mouth and the hook just about pricks it, you've then got tension on the hook which is holding it in place, and the carp then can't get rid of it. So even if they're sucking and blowing, that elasticity, that tension holds that hook in place, and it just makes it a whole lot harder for the carp to deal with. Whether they're used to dealing with big leads, small leads, stiff hook links or soft hook links, this level of elasticity just really gives them something that they find hard to deal with. So it's quite a complex rig to tie, but if you're finding that the carp that you're targeting are really wary, they're dealing with rigs, sucking things in, spitting them out, throwing your rigs around without getting caught, then this could be well worth trying out. To make things simpler, PB Products do actually sell this rig as a ready tied rig, so if you just want to give it a go and see if it works, then it's well worth getting one of their ready tied variants. However, if you find that it's something that you want to do and use a bit more and you want to learn how to tie it up, then just follow this step by step. So first up, I'm going to actually tie up the bungee sort of boom section of the rig, because that very end section can be tied up however you want. Whether it's just a little soft supple section like I had on the rig that I showed you, or even doing something like a hinge stiff rig on the end, you can tie that up however you like. You can tie the boom up in whatever way you like to, so you could put a swivel on the end, you could put a quick change swivel. I'm just going to tie it up with a little loop, just so that you can loop on the hook section. So what you'll need is your ring swivel or swivel for the lead arrangement. You'll need a couple of bungee oval rig rings. You'll need the bungee elastic itself, which PB Products do, and you'll also need a splicing threader, plus the soft and supple and very fine diameter braid, which is going to run through the internals of the bungee elastic. So the first job is I'm going to thread pretty much as much of this bungee elastic onto this splicing threader that I can. So I'll just lubricate that and then start pushing my bungee elastic down the splicing threader. And this will bunch up, so there's loads and loads of it on there. Because the idea is that you want to try and get loads of it threaded onto the fine braid. Now obviously you're never going to be able to just thread fine braid through some tubing, so you're going to need some sort of tool to thread it on, and these little splicing threaders are the perfect tool to do that. I have jammed just about as much as I can fit onto there. Here's my cutters. I'm just going to snip that there. So you'll actually find that there's a surprising amount of elastic on here. Next job is just to take my nice thin supple braid, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this all onto the braid. In fact, what I'm going to actually do is I'm going to use a baiting needle to just poke through there to thread my braid onto the threader, just to make life a little bit easier because it is a bit fiddly. So then once you've got your braid running through, you can then start to thread the elastic off the splicing threader and onto the braid. So there you go, I've got my braid running all the way through that length of bungee elastic. So now the first job is to take one of these little oval rings. that are designed specifically for this. They're sort of like a squashed oval sort of shape. Pass it once through the back, wrap it around one side and pass it back through again. What this basically does is it just wraps the braid around one side, locking it into position, so you can still move it up and down, but it's sort of locked there nice and tightly. I'm just going to move that up the braid and take the opportunity to tie on my hook link to the swivel. I'm going to use a little grinner knot because this is a nice and strong way of tying on supple braid. 1, 2, 3, 6. 6-turn grinner will do. Bed that down. A little bit of lubrication. I can pull that up tight to the ring on the swivel before trimming off my tag end. Right, so next I'm just going to take the little oval ring, feed that all the way down to the base where the swivel is. Now, the key with these oval rings is that they're actually used to hold the bungee elastic in position. So all that you need to do is feed that bungee elastic over the oval ring, pushing it down the length of it. This gives an anchor point for the elastic. Again, like I say, it's quite fiddly to do, but once you've tied one of these up, you can use it over and over and over again, so long as it's not damaged. Right, so then I can pull that down so it all sits nice and flush at the base of that ring swivel. So as you can see, that bungee elastic covers almost the entirety of that little oval ring, sat nice and flush against the ring swivel. Now I'm going to leave plenty of spare material on the other end and cut it off. And the key to this is you want to see how much your elastic stretches along that material, because that's going to be the maximum length that it will stretch to. So if you actually see, I'll pull the braid out straight, I'll stretch the elastic out along it until it's fully stretched. You can see that that's pretty much doubled the length of that elastic there. And that braid is now wound up inside the bungee elastic, which gives it that slightly sort of rippled effect that you might just about be able to see. And you can also see that the actual length of braid hanging out the end now is much, much shorter. Ideally, you want a good few inches of elasticity in your rig, but you can see there that that's the full length of elasticity that was inside that elastic bungee rig. So the next thing that you're going to do is take another one of these oval rings, pass it once through the material, measure out roughly how much elasticity that you're going to want. So I reckon up to about there, so I get sort of maybe 3 or 4 inches of extra elasticity out of the rig. And all that I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a small overhand loop knot in the end of that. I can then trim off my tag end like so. And then what I need to do is stretch the elastic out all the way until it reaches the knot that I just tied and the little ring. And then what you need to do is you just need to keep feeding it up until it passes over those and locks into place. So you can see here I've now got it all the way over the knot and up to the oval ring. I can keep feeding that along that oval ring. Try and pull that elasticity through up to that top section. Push it right down the oval ring, holding it in position. So there you go. That there now has the elastic running all the way up onto the oval ring with just a small loop available in the end, and that's what I'm then going to tie my actual hook section onto. But as you can see, locked between those two little oval rings, you've got a longer length of braid inside the internals of that bungee elastic, and what that allows is for that bungee elastic to have plenty of stretch in it. You get probably, in fact I can even see if I measure it out here, it goes from 8 inches long all the way up to 12.5 inches long, so you've got a good 4 inches of extra movement there. And that's the base section of your bungee rig. Like I say, you can tie whatever you want onto the end of that. So we'll pop that aside now, and I'll quickly tie up the rest of the rig. So first up, I'm just going to cut another length of that braid. I'm just going to tie your standard hair loop in the end. I'm then going to take one of the PB anti-eject hooks. Now you could use a bit of silicone, maybe a rig ring, but I'm basically just going to tie a two sort of turn grinner onto the back of this, just to whip that hook into position, instead of doing either of those. Position that just on the bend of the hook. I'm going to pass the hook link through the eye and just whip it in place with a standard knotless knot. There you go, that hook's tied into place. Then using my needle threader, I'm just going to take a short shank aligner, pass the needle threader up through the aligner, and then just thread it down the hook link material, feeding it up over the eye of the hook. This creates a nice long extension of the hook, helping with your hooking capabilities. Then finally, on the other end, I'm just going to tie another small loop. This is just going to be used to attach to that oval ring in a loop-to-loop fashion. And then take the bungee section, pass that loop through, and feed the rest of the bungee rig through that loop. And there you go. That's your hook section on, and that rig now has loads and loads of elasticity. And like I said, that hook section, you could even tie something like a little chod section if you wanted sort of like an elasticated hinge. And to do that, all that you'd need to do is do the same that I did on this end of the bungee rig with another little ring swivel on this end. Or even you could put a little quick change sort of spinner style swivel and fish it as an elasticated Ronnie rig. So there's loads and loads of options to be able to do. This was just the version that I'm showing you, but as you can see, that elasticity in there really creates something different compared to most rigs that are out there. So if you, like I say, is if you're finding that rigs are getting done, you're not hooking the carp, then this is something that's well worth giving a go.